Jeffrey, you get any video? You trying over there? I'm trying to get this movie. Oh, there, first things first, huh? Yes, sir. He's a friend. Oh, I do that. How you doing? I haven't started your life on my printer these days as well because can't get into it. Should have done a phone call. Wait, I'm looking at our house. Okay.
Okay, let's go ahead and have your seat.
Mr. Bandre and I are comfortable with our social distancing protocols, if it's okay with you.
Our mask on. I would prefer you keep your mask on.
Sure, this T-shirt on my face is accomplishing much, so I will oblige you.
I do appreciate that, Dan.
I think
Actually,
it's up here, though.
yeah, you would be in the center. Yeah.
I think.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Well, then I take it back about social distancing.
Still working.
Just leave it on. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good.
As usual, I'm in the way.
No, you're good. All right, so we're back. Tonight we're going to be now talking with Division II Circuit Judge candidates. As mentioned at the prior forum, prior to tonight, the candidates were advised the rules of the forum. They'll be given 1 minute for an opening statement, and then I'll begin asking a series of questions of the candidates. So we determined the order by drawing before the forum, and our first candidate will be Dan Green, former Jefferson City prosecutor and currently serving a second term as circuit judge, and David Bandry, lawyer for 25 years in Jefferson City and represents several mid-Missouri communities. No Democratic candidates filed for the position. The winner of this primary is virtually assured of election in November. So at this point, we'll start with our opening statements, and Dan, you may begin.
Thank you, Mr. Castor. I would echo our previous panelists by thanking you for having this forum. I think it's very important for the people to get as much information as they can, and it's only through work of good organizations like yours that happens. I will be known as Daniel Green on the ballot. My friends call me Dan, so please feel free to call me Dan for the rest of the evening. I am currently the Cole County Division II Circuit Judge. I've held that position for 10 years. It's a little off on the years because when I was first elected, I took the balance of Judge Callahan's term, so I'm in my second term, but I've only been there 10 years. I am the only candidate with the real experience necessary to ensure that justice is achieved here in Cole County. I am a lifelong conservative Republican, and although no judge tries a case based on somebody's politics, I do believe that a judge should reflect the values of the community in which they live. With regards to that, I have lived in Cole County for 30 years. I raised 4 children here. I have 4 grandchildren here. I do think that being a conservative, I do reflect the values of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Thank you, Mr. Casper. Again, my name is David Vandray. My wife Ginger and I reside in Wardsville. My son resides in Fulton. He's 22. I've had a law practice in Jefferson City for 25 years. I work as a trial lawyer. I work for cities. I represent about 10 different cities here within central Missouri.
Turn your mic on.
Claims to be on. I'm going to start again. My name is Dave Vandray. My wife Ginger and I live in Wardsville. My son Connor lives in Fulton, where he's a soccer coach for William Woods University. I've been a trial attorney here in Jefferson City for 25 years. Since 2001, I've had my own firm, Vandray, Hunt & Snyder, in downtown Jefferson City. And in that time, I've worked in the courts. I've worked in courts in 55 different counties in the state of Missouri. I've practiced before all the courts of appeals, the Missouri Supreme Court, and the United States Supreme Court. I put my courtroom experience up against anyone, whether it's as a judge or as a lawyer. My time in the courtroom has taught me what the law is and has taught me how a courtroom should be run. Thank you.
All right. So we'll start with our first question, David, with you. In a News Tribune story, you mentioned you believe the court, quote, needs to be more available and open. From your perspective, what issues exist now, and what would you do to address them?
I think the biggest issue that's out there is when the courthouse is open, I believe that judges need to be available in the courthouse. There's been a number of times that myself and other members of my firm have needed a judge, have wanted to get a matter ruled on in an exigent situation. That happens. I believe that while the courthouse doors are open, judges need to be there and need to be present. If a docket starts at 9 o'clock and there's lawyers and clients backed up there, the judges need to be available and need to be in the courtroom so that those lawyers are not wasting their clients' money and not wasting time associated with that case. An efficient system, particularly with COVID backing up the court system and leaving a lot of cases needing to be tried, is extremely important. There's not going to be enough hours in the day to get those cases in. And so by availability, I want the courthouse to be there and open, funded by taxpayer dollars, and ready for people to use as often and as frequently as they can.
Okay. Dan, do you believe issues exist with the availability and access to the courts? Why or why not?
Absolutely not. If Mr. Vandray thinks that this is a office-type job, 40 hours a week, then he probably should stay being an attorney. I'm available 24/7. I've received the endorsement of the Jefferson City Fraternal Order of Police, Jefferson City Police Officers Association, primarily because of my availability. Oftentimes my phone rings 1, 2, 3, 4 times a night after midnight, and the police have endorsed me because they know that I'm the judge that is always available. Any insinuation that the courthouse is not open, I'm also confused as to why an attorney would feel like they had a right to come speak to a judge without the other party being present. That's known as an ex parte communication and is illegal. So I think that that is just a red herring at best and a mistruth.
If I could respond to that.
Sure.
Any implication that that would be an ex parte communication is absolutely ridiculous and is nothing but posturing. There are numerous occasions where prosecutors and private counsel, or two attorneys involved in the same case, have an issue that needs to be taken up in front of a judge. It happens on a daily basis. The system works better when lawyers have the ability to meet with a judge. It's that simple.
All right. Next question. Dan, we'll start with you. In a News Tribune story, you mentioned members of the public have told you they are first and foremost interested in public safety. What have they shared with you, and what can you as a judge do to address those concerns?
Well, I do think that we are fortunate to live in a community that is by and large a safe community, and I feel that that community is safe because of our law enforcement professionals. I think it's also safe because our judges do reflect the values of the community. And I think when people turn on their TVs and they see rioting and looting and carnage in other areas, they're worried that that may come to our town. And so I think a judge, first and foremost, needs to make sure that everybody is treated in a fair and impartial manner. But if a jury or a judge has found somebody guilty, then the sentencing needs to reflect the values of the community.
Okay. David, do you believe a judge has a role in improving public safety? If not, why not? And if so, what would it look like?
I certainly think a judge has a role in improving public safety, first and foremost to address those individuals who are on the street creating problems and, frankly, remedying that situation on a case-by-case basis, whether that's incarceration, whether that's education, whether that is diversionary programs to teach better ways. That all lends to public safety. From the standpoint of, as Judge Green mentioned, people in the streets and doing those things, I think the courts can assist in that as well. One of the reasons that we have protests out in public is nationwide a lack of confidence in the court system and a lack of confidence that people are going to get their fair shake. Because of that, they take to alternative methods to air their grievances. If they felt that a fair shake was being given in the courthouse, I think there would be less opportunity and less of a belief that those protests have to happen. That's not going to start with one court. That's not going to start with one judge. That's a nationwide issue. But ultimately, we can help public safety by increasing the confidence in the courts.
Okay. Next question regards operation of the courts. David, you said you've noticed social media posts in which people say they don't like the way things are working in the courts. What would you do to improve the function of the courts if you were a judge?
Well, let's start with the fact that there are serious financial problems with the court system. That's not the fault of anyone in this room, but proper funding would assist. We're going to have some issues when that fifth division comes in, just as far as where warm bodies are going to go. Functionality of the courthouse from that standpoint needs to be addressed. There's some very smart folks over at the courthouse who are working on that. Any way that we could assist and that the public could assist in trying to get more funding for the courts here would benefit who's ever sitting in this seat and in any of the other judicial roles. Realistically, beyond that, I think, again, having expanded hours throughout the normal workday for various different dockets, perhaps having those on more days throughout the week, reserving trial dates for certain dates of the week so that we can fit more dockets in and have the dockets be shorter, more attention be paid to each case. I believe that's going to increase the functionality of that court.
Okay. Dan, how would you assess the functionality of the courts at this time, and what would you like to see changed or improved if you're reelected?
I don't think that there's any problem with the functionality of the courts. Here in Cole County, we do have some physical plant issues, like Dave mentioned, that'll need to be addressed since we're adding on a fifth judge. But I have not heard anybody say anything about how they thought that the courthouse wasn't working efficiently.
Okay. Next, let's talk a little bit about campaign finance. So Dan, as a judge, how can you remain impartial while accepting campaign donations from individuals or groups?
The fact that somebody has paid me money or contributed to my campaign is only an indication that they think I'm a fair and impartial man. And they know that they will receive no favoritism, and in fact, no one has received any favoritism. We run as partisan judges in contested races in outstate Missouri, and that's the way I want it. But I will tell you that with regards to my race, I would say 80% of what I have raised this campaign cycle has been self-contributed by myself.
Okay. David, same question. As a judge, how can you remain impartial while accepting campaign donations from individuals and groups?
Well, I think it starts with the initial interaction with those individuals who have contributed. Historically, those are friends and people that you know, and you let them know, hey, this doesn't impact business. I'll work hard for you, but you're not going to get any favors. People need to know that in advance. I think it's very helpful while it's frustrating to fill out the forms, it is very helpful that we have to publicize who gives money and who we receive money from, and also to whom it's paid. I think that gives some level of clarity to the public so that they can look out and know who that is. It is particularly problematic with lawyers and their gifts to these judicial races. I think sometimes there's a lot of misperception from the public about that. But that's the world in which we live. And so long as it's done within the rules, that's about all you can do. From a perception standpoint, you just have to work every day in court, and if somebody has a concern about it, you recuse yourself from that case and you move on to the next.
Okay. David, the next question will start with you. The winner of the Republican primary election for this position will not face a Democratic opponent in November. Assumably, if you win the seat in August, you've won it in November. As judges are elected to be impartial, what does it mean to you to run for this position as a Republican?
Well, I've been a Republican since the Reagan administration. In high school, I went and watched Reagan land at KCI and went up there to meet him. Campaigned on behalf of the elder Bush in my younger years. The platforms of the parties have changed somewhat through then, but that's how I associate myself. That's how my parents associated themselves. I think it would be disingenuous to pick another party because they're getting press right now to say, we want this change. I am not 100% convinced that judges should run on a platform of Republican or Democrat, because it should not matter what political bend you have. Your job is to read the law and apply the law and not have the luxury of liking or disliking it. With that said, I believe that Republican is how I run because, frankly, that's what I am. I don't know how else that would work. And I think it would be dishonest or disingenuous to do it any other way.
Okay. Dan, same question. What does it mean to you to run for this position as a Republican?
I'm a Republican because those are the moral standards and constitutional standards to which I believe. I believe in life, liberty, public safety, and the protection of all our rights in the Constitution. While no judge would decide a case based on someone being in front of them being a Republican or a Democrat, I think people have a right to know what values you hold, and the way we've decided to do that in the political process is through the use of political parties. I'm proud to be a Republican. I was first elected to office in 1997 as a Republican. Those are the values I hold. I think those values represent this community, and I'm glad that people vote on their judges in Cole County, and they're not appointed by somebody that is not accountable to the people.
Okay, thank you. Dan, this next question will start with you. Will you commit to monitoring sentencing data so racial inequities can be detected and remedied? And how would you propose we try to achieve that racial equality?
Well, I disagree with some of the suppositions in the question. I would certainly commit to tracking any sort of racial inequities, but the question seems to presuppose that somehow the system is responsible for the racial inequities. Clearly, there are problems in certain communities where they're disproportionately represented in our criminal justice system. But the solution is not a top-down solution from the court, it is a bottom-up solution from the communities. The number one factor as to whether you're going to get in trouble with the law is whether you come from a two-parent household or not. The second factor is whether you've graduated high school. So tracking people coming through the court system is going to do nothing to remedy those two situations other than maybe give someone else more data to make sure the people don't come into the system in the first place.
Okay, David, same question.
Well, certainly, any data that can be collected is helpful. So long as there's a perception that the system is broken, then the system cannot function at its finest. If people in the community of any color believe that they're not getting a fair shake in the court system, then we need to address that. If they are in fact getting a fair shake, then it's an education issue, educating them that, hey, the system is working for you and here's the way that you can deal with it. But so long as a segment of society feels that they are not getting a proper attention within the courthouse, that means the system cannot run at its most efficient. So how do we address that? Through education, through allowing those individuals to communicate with someone at the court, an ombudsman, some sort of a resource officer, to say, these are the concerns that I have with it. And then we look at those and we address them. Is it one individual just complaining because they committed a crime and got sentenced for it? Okay, we're going to analyze that. But do you find some systemic problem that's there? That data always helps you run the system better. And so gathering that data is beneficial at any level, if for no other reason than to address whether there is in fact a problem.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, so let's see, David, we'll start with you on this question. Actually, Dan. Nope.
I think it's Dave.
I think it is Dave.
I think it's Dave.
I'm getting confused here. Okay, what is the one issue you think that has not been covered from a media standpoint regarding courts?
In this election in particular, or generally?
Generally.
I think there is a lack of understanding of the judicial system. The number of folks that I talk to on the street who want a baseline definition of the difference between a municipal judge and an associate circuit judge and a circuit court judge is really somewhat astounding. I think we hit the big things in high school civics classes, and unless you're majoring in some of these topics at a higher education, it's not there. Educating of voters is an absolutely crucial factor as we push to have more people engage in the voting process. That's great, but having them show up solely because they recognize a name, that's not really an efficient use of the process. So one of the things that I think can really be done by the press is some baseline education of what the system is and how it works. Some of that is incumbent upon me as a candidate and Judge Green as a candidate to educate those folks who come up and ask. And I'm betting that the folks who you talked to before from Division 5 and certainly the folks from Division 3 will do the same. We can benefit in that. But educating the public as to what they do and what sort of cases these individuals will be hearing becomes very important and, again, helps the system to run more smoothly.
Okay, thank you. Dan, same question.
We are very fortunate as Americans to be participants in the greatest legal and justice system that the world has ever known. It truly is the Cadillac of any other legal scheme. Now, that being said, Cadillacs may be more expensive to run, they may be more expensive to maintain, so because we have the best system, we have to put the resources behind it to make sure it's functioning at full throttle. And if that means paying, getting more lawyers to represent indigent defendants, then we need to do that. If that means having bigger courthouses so that people want to come and serve on our juries instead of being, crammed into a 120-year-old building, then maybe that needs to happen. I like our courthouse. It is a historic courthouse. I like it being downtown, but it needs to expand because the way the system works is our jury system and our trial system, and it's getting just quite a little bit cramped.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, so let's begin with our closing statements. We'll start with Dan.
I did some statistics in anticipation of this race. Last year, calendar year 2019, Division 2, of which I am in charge of, was assigned 3,200 cases. The other two circuit divisions had 2,100 cases assigned to them and 1,400 cases. Despite having, in one respect, twice as many cases, the National Center for State Courts gave me a 99.8% clearance rate on my cases. I think I'm doing a good job. I'm the only candidate with the real experience. I am a real conservative that reflects the values in this community, and I've chosen to raise my family and live in this community for that reason. I would appreciate your vote on August 4th in the Republican primary.
Okay, thank you. David?
Thank you, Mr. Castor, and I appreciate the opportunity again to be here. Again, I'll put my experience and my knowledge of the law up against anyone. My courtroom experience is every bit as valuable, and in fact, more valuable, because I've seen what works with other judges, and frankly, I've seen what doesn't work. I work from 7 in the morning every day through the evening. I take work home and I work there. My work ethic is what will drive this job and what will make the courthouse better. Change for the sake of change is not a good idea, but change to make the system better is what keeps America going and what keeps the legal system prospering. I'd like the opportunity. I think that I am uniquely qualified for the opportunity, and I would appreciate your vote on August 4th, Dave Bandrake. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you again, Mr. Castor. I really enjoyed it, and this is a great service you provide.
Thank you very much, and I would again encourage voters to get out and vote August 4th. We are going to take a brief break and begin again with Division 3.
Oh, no. No, you may not. No, not safely.
You're at the center also?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Water bottle up here, was there water given or did they bring those?
I'm sorry, say again?
Was the water bottle given or did they bring those?
It was given.
Okay.
They'll put one up there for you.
Okay. Mr. Green didn't use his, or I don't know if he touched it or not, and Mr. Bandry left some trash, excuse me, Mark. There's the magic.
What was that?
So there's the magic of water. I didn't know where it was earlier. Thank you.
Just a few?
I think Mr. Green, that he didn't use it, as far as I could tell. Could be a parting gift.
It could have been given to me. I didn't use it.
Jeffrey, you writing about this, or you writing something else? No, I'm writing about this. Oh, man, what do they call that? Okay, that's what I would call it. I'll tell you how you understand. Really cuts down on the note.
We usually do a sound check on our favorite baseball team, although I don't know whether we could just put on that. Probably not.
So for the record, what are your favorite baseball teams?
Well, St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh, there you go. All right, very good. It was somewhat surreal to see them playing when I left the newsroom earlier today. Yes.
I think, I got a text about that. I think it was a greater concern with the 4 of you than it is with 2. But
And our plan is, we will have a video that we can attach to the story tomorrow.
Gotcha.
So there's a,
text from somebody said they were able to see the video on Jeff City TV because they can see me sitting where I am.
okay, all right. Art was telling me that I think the last storm that went through caused a little bit of havoc on some of the systems. All right, so tonight we're going to start our third forum here. This will be Division III Circuit Judge. As mentioned in the previous forums, prior to tonight, the candidates were advised of the rules of the forum. They will be given 1 minute for an opening statement, and then I'll begin asking a series of questions. So let me introduce tonight's candidates. So to my right is Mark Richardson, former Jefferson City Municipal Judge and Cole County Prosecuting Attorney. To my left, Cotton Walker, former Jefferson City Municipal Judge and currently serving first term as Cole County Associate Circuit Judge. No Democratic candidates filed for the position, so the winner of the Republican primary is virtually assured of election in November. So we drew lots to begin, and Mark, you will begin with the opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Castor, and thank you all for having this forum. I'm running for circuit judge because I want to make changes to our system. And part of those changes are certainly to protect the public, to speed up cases, and to deliver a justice that's far better than what's been delivered by my opponent up to now. There are too many people that have become accustomed, especially criminals, to the free bail, no jail type system. And those who know me know I am a true law and order conservative approach judge, and one of my main policies as judge is to make sure that justice is delivered in a prompt manner and that people who need their cases decided can get decisions from judges quickly. The experience I have in reviewing cases and as judge for 7.5 years, sitting on the municipal bench deciding cases where I earned a reputation as a law and order judge, and then 12 years as a prosecuting attorney where I tried the most significant jury trials, some of which have been tried in our county in 2 decades. I believe that I have what it takes to become a judge that will make changes that better serve our community. Thank you.
Okay, Cotton.
Thank you and good evening, and thank you, Gary and News Tribune. Appreciate everyone listening in online or on JCTV tonight. I am Cotton Walker. I'm currently serving as the Associate Circuit Judge, as Mr. Castro alluded to. I was elected that position in 2018, and before that I served as Municipal Judge elected and Municipal Judge appointed, and also served in this room right here as Municipal Prosecutor prior to that. I am married to my wife Deborah of 25 years. We have 2 children. You see us in the community. I'm involved in volunteer organizations and supporting the community, and as I have been throughout my entire career, from when I started practicing law and returned to Cole County in 1991. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. So with our first question, we'll start with Cotton. In this period of civil unrest that's sweeping much of the nation, what could you, as a judge, do to address the public's concerns about safety and equal justice?
Well, obviously, equal justice is a tenet of my practice on the bench, and as we've talked about on the campaign, when I've talked to citizens in the community, to the extent that we could do that in this COVID campaign of 2020, a judge has a responsibility to stay intentionally connected to the community and know what the expectations are and reflect them in the decisions on the bench. I do believe that we have, while we have a duty to reflect those communities' concerns, including in the area of civil unrest in response to things that did not happen in Cole County, but at the same time, a judge has to remain impartial. I was asked to, for example, speak out or talk about the march here in town after Mr. Floyd was killed, and both during, before, and after, I had to remind people that as a judge where some case could come before me, I could not comment. I take that independence as a judge seriously, and while you have to lead in your involvement in the community and lead in your decisions on the bench, you can't take a position or speak out on certain individual cases as they may come before you.
Okay, thank you. Mark, same question. What could you, as a judge, do to address the public's concerns about safety and equal justice?
Well, as to safety, first and foremost, if people know that the court is predictable in terms of the punishment fits the crime, and if the police know that the leaders of the city back them up and allow them to do their jobs, then there will be safety and the riots will not have to be going on in the cities. Where generally Democrat leaders for too long, through their judging and prosecuting, etc., have wanted to be social justice workers, much like I believe my opponent is a social justice judge or social worker judge, then things deteriorate. If people know that there's rules that apply to everyone, and peaceful protest is not people blocking interstate highways or tearing down buildings or setting police stations on fire. Equal justice occurs also when judges, and I as a prosecuting judge before, and as Mr. Walker said, he was a municipal prosecutor also, and he was a Democrat elected municipal prosecutor here. And I believe that there is a difference in the party affiliation that I subscribe to is law and order is what guarantees people's safety. And allowing the police to do their jobs makes people safe and also strives towards equal justice. And so when we get off on trying to keep people out of jail all the time, then we're headed down the wrong path in terms of keeping the public safe. Safety is people saying, I don't want to have to go see that judge, which when I was judge, many police officers and citizens will tell you that people told them they did not want to come to city court to see Judge Richardson. And that's a deterrent effect. Judging can be done in such a way where there's a deterrent effect and there is fairness and equal justice for all people. But it has to be by rules and law and order. Thank you.
Okay. So, Mark, let's talk about alternative courts. How would you assess the circuit's use of alternative courts? What areas are they excelling or could improve their impact? What areas do you believe they are falling short of the original goal or providing justice?
Our circuit courts, and I was involved in them as Cole County prosecutor for 12 years. We always had a representative in every one of the alternative court programs. Those programs work best for first-time offenders, non-violent, who have no prior records. Those programs fail when judges put people in those programs that have prior records, especially those records that contain violence in the past. And they also work good when they're attended to regularly, and violations, people who violate the requirements of the program are removed from the program early on so that those who are benefiting from it can benefit more as our society does. The worst that I saw was programs where people who shouldn't have been put in them were put in them. People with violent records got into programs. People sometimes that were dealing drugs and had never taken drugs got into programs. As time went on, more and more, the police information to our office and our information to the program that someone was selling, and therefore that's why they always tested positive, was disregarded. And so people were in the program that were a detriment to the program because they weren't removed. And as I said, the programs have a place, but it's very important that the person that's a gatekeeper, which is the judge and the screening, or ultimately the judge, ensures that the taxpayer dollars are being spent wisely on that program to get the best result, and people who shouldn't be in the program aren't put in it, and people that fail it quickly are removed so those that are benefiting can continue to benefit and be a good citizen after they're done.
Okay?
Could you repeat the question? I want to make sure I get all the answer.
Absolutely. Cotton, how would you assess the circuit's use of alternative courts? What areas are they excelling or could improve their impact? What areas are they failing or falling short of the original goal of providing justice?
Very well. Well, alternative courts, in Cole County, to be clear, we have a veterans court, we have a adult drug court, we have a DWI court, and we have a mental health or co-occurring court. And statistically, courts who have high-risk, high-need people, these are mostly felony after conviction, if it's properly applied, and that's something that when I came on the bench and started being involved in our local court, if there was something that we didn't do a good job of prior to my taking the bench at the associate circuit level, was we didn't always have post-plea participants in the program. I do believe it needs to be post-plea. Prior to 2019, when I became involved in the local treatment courts, it wasn't always that way, but we have moved that way because I believe that's a best practice. But then statistically, treatment courts are the best way to reduce repeat offenders, the best way. Now, it's because they get the attention, because they get therapeutic responses where those are appropriate, or consequences where those are appropriate. Consequences sometimes for a judge, even in a treatment court, can be jail. It can be kicking back out of the program, in which case most of those cases are probationers, and they go back to the original judge where they already pled guilty, and then they are sentenced, usually to prison.
Okay. All right, next question is on gun violence. Cotton, gun violence is a concern for many in mid-Missouri. How do you approach cases involving the use of weapons in a crime? What role does a judge have in stemming gun violence in society?
Well, this is a good question, and it is a concern in our community. You asked a question earlier of candidates about what they may have heard from the public, and gun violence is one that I've heard. It also gives me an opportunity to talk about how I handle the bond rules, because my opponent shows a fundamental lack of understanding of what the bond rules are from the Supreme Court that changed since he left the prosecutor's office. If someone commits a crime and they come through my division in Associate Circuit Court, I am doing 98% of the initial bond hearings, as described by one of the candidates earlier. I believe Mr. Smith kind of went through the 48-hour hearing and then the 7-day hearing. We are factoring in certainly the risk to the community and the risk of failure to appear, but there are also 12 other factors in the rule that we have to factor in. However, you can ask any member of the local defense bar, if a weapon is involved in the commission of a felony and it's brandished or certainly fired, they don't get a bond. Now, the Constitution says all but capital cases are entitled to bond or bond consideration, but in the Associate Division, the one Associate Division we have right now, if a felony is uses a gun, then they do not get a bond, because I believe they are a threat to the community automatically. And I believe that is something that's important for the community to hear, and for the defenses, and if you will, the defense bar, the defendants and the defense bar to know that, so that it can hopefully reduce the amount of gun crime.
Okay, thank you. Mark, same question.
Okay, Mark Richardson, yes. First, let me address the bond rules. Judge Walker let out a armed robber, first degree, on a free bail, free ROR bond, named Levontre Williams. The paper's aware of this. He later, Mr. Williams, got charged with acting with another to shoot a woman in the back within about 90 days or so of getting out on the free bail. That's what I am not for all the free bails on dangerous criminals. We have a place, we're a wealthy county, so to speak, we have a big jail, we can hold them. And the public deserves us to hold them. And the thing I get from the voters out there is they're tired of seeing people commit violent crimes that should have never been on the street because of their prior offenses. Now, as to gun violence, our statute began as an armed criminal action statute that said, in addition to any other punishment, an armed criminal shall get an additional 3 years. Now, that became interpreted by our courts to mean it could be concurrent. I believe those should be consecutive sentences. And if judges want to get serious about stopping gun violence, that's the way to do it. So that if the minimum is 10 years on an armed robbery, because it's armed, then tack on at least 3 years consecutive, which hurts a defendant more and sends a message also to the public that we are not going to tolerate gun violence because we don't have to tolerate it, and judges can stand firm on that and make the punishment fit the crime. There's no reason with our wealth that we have to live in fear of criminals carrying around guns. And I think that it can easily be addressed so that we begin piecemeal to make sure that those who carry guns and commit crimes see a punishment that fits that crime, because the inherent risk that them bringing a gun into the crime adds to a person getting killed. Thank you.
Cotton, would you like to rebut his statement?
Well, he's talking about an individual case that he doesn't know all the facts about. One of the factors that a judge has to also consider is in the 12 factors is the weight of the evidence of the case, because the Constitution says you are not guilty until proven otherwise, and you are entitled to bail. In the individual case, I don't remember the exact situation, but he certainly didn't have the information that the court did, nor that the prosecutor presented in that case.
Okay.
Can I rebut that? I have the information from the detective that worked the case who I talked to about it, because it was serious. When I'm sitting and I see that kind of crime occur, an innocent woman driving down the street is shot in the back by someone who should have been in jail on a serious armed robbery, first degree, is a serious offense. A minimum 10 years to 30 years or life imprisonment is what the person faces, plus whatever the armed criminal action would be on whatever weapon was threatened to be used. And so, yes, that person should not be on bail, and the public, I can tell you, is tired of seeing that going on in our community when it should not be going on.
Okay, let's go to our next question. Mark, we'll start with you. You've said crimes against law enforcement officers haven't been given the priority they should be. Can you give examples of where that's happened and what should have been done?
Well, sure, it's happened right here. When I was municipal judge, I had certain predictable sentences for serious offenses. So if a person is found guilty of assaulting a police officer, they have to serve time in jail. That occurred for almost 8 years while I was down here. That sometimes doesn't occur anymore. And if I've always said, if our police cannot protect themselves and be given a degree of protection from the courts, then how are they going to protect citizens? And they don't get paid enough to do their job, get assaulted, and have someone say, well, that's part of your job. It's not. They're human beings, they're citizens, and when someone assaults them because they wear the badge and they're trying to enforce the law, that person needs to go to jail. And when I don't see that happening in our courts, it makes me sad. It makes me know that more police are going to be leaving than staying. And we need the police and have to have the police to have law and order and safety of all of our citizens, especially the most vulnerable, elderly, and young.
So to follow up that question, you've couched us that that's existing today. So how prevalent is it that you've witnessed crimes against law enforcement?
Well, oftentimes resisting arrest has, to me, risen the last 6 years I was prosecutor versus the first 6 years. and assaults on officers rose. And it is encouraged sometimes by judges of municipal courts and associate courts who did not follow through and give the punishment that our community deserved to be given out for assaults on police officers. And I've heard many times, not only from police officers, but from citizens, how disappointing that is when it occurs. And if we want to keep police, they have to be able to protect themselves, and they have to know that when they get assaulted for no other reason than they're wearing a badge and a uniform and trying to enforce the law, that person is going to spend time in jail, not some suspended probation.
Okay. Cotton, do you believe crimes against law enforcement officers should be given a greater priority? Why or why not?
Well, yes, and in my work on the bench at the municipal level and the associate circuit court, when a defendant has a conviction for assault of a law enforcement officer, they get jail time. They got jail time, of course, municipal court, the limitation was 90 days, and in fact, while in a municipal bench, we gave that maximum sentence on multiple counts to a particular defendant. We do the same thing at the associate level when they are convicted. I support what they do. A lot of those assault of a law enforcement officer, just so that everyone understands the issue, is when somebody also flees or fails to obey or interferes with an arrest, which is a horrible thing. It puts, given especially what we see nationally in the tenor, the risk on the law enforcement officer, the risk on the individuals, and the risk of other bystanders, some of whom may be obviously very innocent or not involved. So should it be given more attention or more priority? Absolutely, because it is a tenet of the justice system and how we do that in Cole County.
Okay. Next question will go to Cotton. As a judge, how can you remain impartial while accepting campaign donations from individuals and groups?
Well, everyone who knows me knows that I remain impartial in everything that I do on the bench. There are campaign finance laws that show who has contributed, but also judges cannot solicit funds. So I have not solicited a dollar in this run or last run directly from any individual, whether they were an attorney, potential litigant, or what have you. But then we also have conflict rules. And if someone who has been a family member or contributor or a close friend or close neighbor, number one, the judge has a duty to disclose the potential conflict, and number two, the judge has the duty to then step off the case, recuse him or herself. I do believe our political system is built on money. We have to pay for ads in the newspaper, for example. We have to pay for the yard signs, although I think this time though there were great candidates with lots of fantastic signs, we may have been beat out by the roofing companies, and at least in the western part of Cole County during this time. But frankly, I don't keep track of who contributed to my campaign or maybe an opponent's campaign, and that also assists in making sure that I remain impartial in any decision I make on the bench.
Okay. Same question, Mark.
Thank you. As prosecutor, and also in this judge race, I have not accepted money from attorneys. I've not ever solicited money from attorneys in those races. I will remain impartial no matter who gives me money, because the reason they're giving me money is, I believe sincerely, they want to see a change at our judge level that we're going into. This is Judge Joyce's position that she's leaving. Mr. Walker has another 2 years on his term, and I think people want to see a new judge up there like me, who is a law and order judge. They are giving me money because they want that change, not because they want partiality. And I think a judge can remain impartial. I will note, and he does say that the rules allow you to see that, he has gotten several donations from mainly Democrat lawyers in town. And can he remain impartial? He says he can. I hope that he can in his current job, and if he wins this one also. But I do not accept that money just to avoid the thought that someone may have that because they hired this particular attorney and they saw that attorney gave money to a judge, that they may get some better deal. And they don't, I believe they don't, but there shouldn't be that worry about it, and I don't want that to occur either when I was prosecutor or if I become judge. So there won't be that worry for me.
Okay. Next question will start with Mark. You stated the court system must address issues with lengthy delays in civil and criminal cases. Explain how you've come to that conclusion and what you would do differently as a judge.
Well, part of it is, and I have looked at Judge Walker's dockets, and I see misdemeanor cases pending for more than a year. Now, society has an interest in getting those cases done, so the smallest cases in the system certainly need to be done within 90 days to 120 days. And the Supreme Court's issued guidelines on when cases should get done. Serious felony cases should get done. The society, the community has an interest in getting, for example, a murder case done in a timely way. The victims have an interest, and also the defendant, who has a speedy trial right, but many times doesn't file for a speedy trial. Still, there's an interest in getting it done. And the longer cases languish on the docket, then the more cases that pile up. The more people feel like they're going into lengthy dockets that never get done. They have to wait forever while they're there. Cases get continued, and it can be stopped. When I started as a lawyer in a serious felony case that had been set for trial within 9 months of the date of the crime, if someone came up with a continuance motion that was valid, the judge would generally do this. Okay, I feel like I've got to grant a continuance. How long is it going to take to get this done? Or you're going to get it done in 30 days because we only continued it 30 days or 60 days. It wasn't continued for another year out. Now, we're getting a 5th judge in our circuit, and these cases need to move, and I will do my part, if I'm elected judge, to ensure that people get a swifter, prompter decision than they're getting now.
Okay. Cotton, do you believe an issue exists with lengthy delays in civil and criminal cases? Why or why not?
Well, right now, the only reason that might be true is because of COVID. We were issued an order by the Supreme Court to prioritize only habeas corpus and felony criminal matters, but not have jury trials for a period of many weeks, a couple of months. And as that was happening, I was modifying the dockets so that once we came out of COVID, we could get every court case on a docket. We've added dockets. Tomorrow, we have 2 new dockets that we would not have had pre-COVID to make sure the cases move along. Cases do not delay in my court unless there is an issue of getting a public defender assigned. I heard one of the speakers earlier talk about that. That is an issue where there is jail as a possibility. Our Constitution says everyone has a right to counsel, and if the public defender says you qualify, right now, for a while there was a long wait list. They have found some funding, thanks in part to our work at the courthouse, and that wait list has come way down. But the cases are moving, and speedy trial requests are obviously kept up with. And on the civil matters in the Associate Circuit Court are obviously cases litigated over less than $25,000 in controversy, but also landlord, tenant, and some other civil matters that are very important to the individuals. And when we hit the COVID reset, I continued those cases only a couple weeks at a time, just hoping and waiting for us to be able to take up those matters to protect each side of the litigation situation. You know, for federal housing, there was a national stay on evictions, but in Cole County, more of our landlords are individual property owners who may also rely on that rental income on their property. And you can see that we do move those along, and I make swift decisions after trial. Cases do not stay under advisement, as you might say, in my division more than about a week.
Okay. Next question, we'll start with Cotton. Do you think judges should have more leeway in sentencings?
Well, you know, there are certain things, there are certain guidelines and certain mandatory sentencing statutes, and I do believe that the judge in the individual case has the most information to make the best decision on a sentencing. Obviously, in jury trials, sometimes the jury gets to make that sentencing. Do I think we need more leeway? I'm not sure that's the way I see it, but you do need to trust the discretion of the judge with the experience, being in a courtroom, knowing each fact in that case. we have to hear from the prosecution and the defense on the sentencing as well, and we rely on other factors such as probation or sentence investigation. But I do not like legislating from the other branch of government to the judiciary to tell us a particular case has this exact sentence, because each case can be different. At the same time, when it's a harsher penalty for a harsher felony, I believe it's deserved, and that's how I will sentence when I sentence on felonies. Of course, right now, I hear felony cases, but only to the preliminary hearing stage. And I also believe that while in the associate division and involvement in treatment court, we're talking about giving people a second chance if they're a first-time offender or something. Once you get to that felony level, once you've committed more than one felony, you should expect to go to prison if you come through my court.
Okay. Mark, same question.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mark Richardson, and certainly judges need a great amount of leeway in sentencing, but that leeway is confined to a range set by the legislature, of course, through the people. And those are important ranges that judges have to look at, and they have to sentence according to that range. A component of a judge's sentencing is not so much in whether they're within the range or not, because they have to for a lawful sentence, but the experience that judge has in approaching that case. I've tried over 120 jury trials. The circuit court is a jury trial court. When it comes to sentencing, my experience is going to best serve our community in who gets the upper end of that range and who gets the lower end of that range with imprisonment. Another important thing going into this would be, if I'm elected judge, is my understanding and knowing that a year ago, a component of our truth in sentencing law was removed by the legislature and signed by the governor that changed the 40, 60, and 80% rules when a person's eligible for parole. So as a judge, I now have to keep in mind that I'm not going to get a guarantee on a lot of cases that as prosecutor I was doing where we got a guarantee, but they were changed retroactively, so that some case where we told a victim, we know that because of the truth in sentencing rule, this person will not be eligible to have a parole review until they serve 50%, let's say, of a 4-year sentence. So they're going to be in for 2 years. With that removed, we can't say that. And without that certainty, it makes it a much tougher job to sentence defendants coming before the court in the future than it did in the past. And I think my experience, as I said, in circuit court, where jury trials are a big part of the system, then my experience will better serve the public to have me deciding where in that range a person's sentence should be.
Okay. All right, so let's start our closing statement. So Mark, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark Richardson, and thank you for hosting this. And I want to say to the people watching how humble I am in the fact that they gave me the chance to serve nearly an 8-year term as a municipal judge of Jefferson City, where I had what many people have described as a very well-respected court for the community, and how great that was, and the great run I had of being able to serve this community as the elected Cole County prosecutor for 12 years, where I worked hard every day trying to see that justice was done, and that as an advocate for our community, for safety. I understand going in this, and I want people to understand, as a judge, I no longer would be an advocate. I will be an umpire. I'll have to weigh out the evidence in cases and make decisions as a neutral and impartial judge, as I did before when I was in municipal court. And I would like to remind the people that need to recall this or check with police officers. The things that held true to me based on my values as a tried and true lifetime Republican will hold true for me as a circuit judge, and I would appreciate your vote August 4th to help me get back into the court system where I can serve the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cotton?
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, News Tribune. I appreciate also the opportunity to be here. I see it as a part of my public service. I was initially appointed as a municipal judge in 1994, serving in our communities of Russellville and Lowman, and then substitute judge in this room, actually, as municipal judge, as well as an interim judge here twice before being elected here, and then serving in the Associate Circuit Division at the courthouse. I am anxious for us to have a second associate circuit division, whether that's with me and one other judge or with two new judges serving in the Cole County Courthouse, because it is a busy circuit. But make no mistake, cases in my division get the right attention and they move along. So I gave my introduction by telling you about my family and what I've done in the community, but voters know me. You know me, and don't just judge me by what my opponent says I am, because you know me better. Believe in the me that believes in you, and I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here tonight. And again, I would encourage voters to come out August 4th and help decide this election. On behalf of the News Tribune, I'd like to thank the candidates for all three of these races for participating. I'd also like to thank Jefferson City and JCTV staff for their assistance in holding and broadcasting these forums. With an acknowledgement that we've had some issues with the video feed, our intent at the News Tribune is to post tomorrow the video feed for those who perhaps want a little bit more clarity as to who was speaking, as well as just a refresher of what was said. So that will be available at newstribune.com. So in addition to stories, I'll do a little soapbox promo here for my company. In addition to our coverage of these forums tonight and tomorrow's News Tribune, we'll have a variety of means by which you can become more informed about these races. We will be asking candidates questions we didn't get to tonight. And lastly, we'll be publishing a voter's guide on Sunday, August 2nd. I would just close by saying our society is served best by an informed and active electorate. I would encourage you to take advantage of the resources and then get out to vote on August 4th. Thank you and good night.